Jim Carrey was Hollywood's elastic meteor long before he became a reclusive painter or a spiritual philosopher. He was too brilliant, too quick, and unavoidable. He transformed comedy movies, which were about jokes when he first arrived in the 1990s, into sporting events. Energy exploded like an unchecked science experiment. Faces extended beyond anatomy, and bodies became punctuation marks. Colleagues referred to it as exhausting. Critics occasionally referred to it as excess, and studios referred to it as genius. Friction, the kind creative combustion that always ignites, rather than hatred. Carrey seldom squandered energy on that. After working in comedy and drama for 30 years, he discovered that ego and artistry frequently go hand in hand. What the media eventually portrayed as feuds were typically miscommunications between two opposing gravities, the improvisational cyclone and the precise artisan. Acting, he once said, is like an out-of-body experiment. When I'm in it, there's no gym, just electricity trying to find a shape, he remarked. This electricity can light up a set or torch everything around it. Frequently, it does both. Crew members recall collapsing in laughter and exhaustion at the same time during the hard rehearsals behind the hilarity of Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Liar Liar. Carrey's approach was complete surrender to absurdity rather than submission to realism. The outcomes not only smashed box office records, but also pushed the limits of patience. He lived inside characters for periods of time that pushed sanity, rarely shutting down after takes. Actors have reported witnessing him alternate between concentrate and camaraderie in such a way that it resembled estrangement. He doesn't push people away, one director previously said. He forgets to send a forwarding address and simply vanishes into someone else. Those collisions were accentuated by early fame. Carrey's quick ascent from in living color sketch artist to $20 million per film celebrity created a paradox in Hollywood, the class clown with unheard of power. Creative license was granted by success, but this license required trust, which few colleagues had yet to develop. His insistence on immersive acting famously shocked co-workers on projects such as Man on the Moon or The Cable Guy. He didn't just act when he played Andy Kaufman. He lived it, to the extent that he and director Milos Forman later acknowledged that the experience verged on ownership. "I was unable to locate Jim," Forman remarked years later. Even seasoned co-stars vacillated between worry and appreciation. What appeared to be conflict from the outside frequently concealed worry. How can you work with someone who blurs the distinction between actor and act? For Carrey, conflict meant enforcing sincerity rather than using violence. If politeness stifled spontaneity, he distrusted it. He once said, "Comedy dies when people get comfortable." This way of thinking led to both migraines and masterpieces. Because of this, working with him can be both thrilling and exhausting. His unpredictable nature, each take a new invention, was adored by cameramen. However, continuity editors complained that nothing was consistent from one frame to the next. You can tidy up or you can tell the truth, not both. Directors learned to select moments, not control them. Jim regarded that disorder as the cost of discovery. Carrey's internal conflict, the comedian seeking spiritual calm while thriving on chaos, was also reflected in the conflict between discipline and spontaneity. After days of rubber mask change, he withdrew into art, meditation, and long, solitary drives through the hills of Los Angeles in an attempt to piece together his identity. He has stated that you have to find your own face again when the movie ends. His melancholy was evident in darker productions such as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and The Truman Show. Instead of velocity, both roles demanded vulnerability, and his co-workers saw the difference. Carrey was still intense, but he was also friendlier and more cooperative. He was later characterized by director Michel Gondry as a method actor for emotion, not just behavior. Some creative tension was misinterpreted as hatred by the media, which was eager for simple dichotomies. In actuality, rhythm mismatch was the root cause of the majority of his set problems. Film sets prefer metronomes, while Carrey works in jazz time. Instead of light-hearted friendliness, co-stars occasionally encountered cerebral discussions about illusion and ego. He occupied downtime during lengthy shootings with discussions on energy and consciousness, subjects that could perplex colleagues who were only there to deliver lines. One production worker jokingly remarked, "He lives 3 layers deeper than most actors at 8 a.m. Depending on one's character, that depth might be daunting or impressive, but sometimes it comes across as distant. However, a number of people who went back to work with him, including Tommy Lee Jones, Jeff Daniels, and others, admitted that lightning rarely strikes the same area twice, and when it does, you have to suffer the shock because brilliance hides in it. Beneath the bizarre comedy was discipline that had been practiced since early childhood. Growing up in a working-class family in Ontario that survived financial ruin, Carrey learned that performance was essential to survival. At 15, he worked as a janitor at night, a stand-up comedian at night, a student during the day, and a dreamer all at once. It became instinctive to use scarcity to create joy. Later, as Hollywood lavished him with wealth and expectations, that impulse turned into superstition. Perhaps fortune would disappear if he stopped being outrageous. He was battling the ghosts of poverty, not people, which explains why his early co-workers mistakenly believed that he was arrogant. The crashes became softer as decades passed. Even as self-reflection deepened, age rounded edges. The younger, provocation-loving man started advocating for silence. He shocked reporters during the 2010s press tours with philosophical one-liners like, "I don't exist," and "We're all playing characters," which were misinterpreted as pessimism but were actually expressions of thankfulness for living without ego. For those who knew him, it was the same voice that used to fill concerts with non-stop improvisations but had now shifted from humor to mysticism. He had always prayed for creation, but now he just said the joke. However, because those unstable sets represented the conflict between the two faiths of art, control and chaos, their remembrance endures in Hollywood legend. Carrey is the epitome of the latter. His co-workers discovered that collaborating with him meant letting the blueprint be left up to chance. Furthermore, accident frequently translates to genius in the vocabulary of film that he recently grinned with disarming humility when asked if he regretted upsetting anyone. "They all helped me find quiet, whether they knew it or not," he continued. "If I could apologize to every person I ever overwhelmed, I'd start with breakfast and finish by midnight." It's a mea culpa steeped in evolution. The class clown's blessing to those who shared the arena. In retrospect, what supporters believed to be rivalry instead shows a guy using contradiction to find the truth. From rubber-faced anarchist to meditative artist, his career repeatedly revisits that experiment, the coexistence of self-eruption and compassion in the same body. The conflict wasn't motivated by hatred. Rather, it was evidence that cooperation, like comedy, can only exist in conflict. Jim Carrey's interior landscape was altered in the years following The Truman Show. He played a man whose whole life was a lie, and he looked directly into his own. Huge stages masquerading as real life, solitude concealed by applause. He had what he desired and few people to share it with because of his fame. He subsequently told a journalist, "I was the guy living inside a product, and the product had my face." This discovery, which was part breakdown, part enlightenment, turned the volatile performer into a seeker. The creative collision turned inward. He fought against his own ego instead than co-stars. That self-examination led to some of his most brilliant performances in the early 2000s. In contrast to his previous flexibility, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind required such exquisite restraint. In contrast to the boisterous Jim they remembered, co-workers remember how silently he strolled around the set. He found emotion in the spaces he used to fill with jokes, director Michel Gondry noted. It turned into an inadvertent conversation with his former selves, chaos meeting quiet. Even yet, discipline occasionally ran afoul of ingrained tendencies. Scenes would fall apart when spontaneity showed. He would then regroup, contrite, and concentrated. In between takes, he admitted, "I've spent a career being everything to everyone, and now I'm trying to be nothing for a minute." This dichotomy became his new strategy, acting sincere by retreating. Eccentric impulse was recalibrated rather than eliminated by such constraint. Crews saw the sympathetic side of Carrey's experimenting on Yes Man and I Love You Philip Morris. He continued to improvise constantly, but instead of overwhelming his teammates, he used it to empower them. Co-star Ewan McGregor remarked, "He throws trust at you like a beach ball. If you drop it, he just tosses another." Whereas that unpredictable nature had scared colleagues years before, it now encouraged play. As if he had finally grasped that turbulence is best shared. Age had transformed intensity into compassion that in purposefully surprising ways. His changing attitude started to seep into public discourse. Reporters startled at Carrey's beatific smile and declaration, "None of this is real," during red carpet interviews, not knowing if he was trolling or transcending. Rather than providing an explanation, he allowed confusion to function as a performance piece, an existential follow-up to his comedy movies. Some of his peers were offended by the gesture because they missed the approachable comedian, but for him, it was a liberating transformation. He subsequently said, "I was a guy possessed by desire. Now I'm a guy possessed by awareness." Art beyond cinema was created by that awareness, including philosophical articles about consciousness, political cartoons flowing with color and conscience, and paintings that stretched across warehouse walls. Interpersonal strife from the past 10 years gave way to self-irony. He now chuckled at his instability, while before he may argue verbally over creative control. He said to a podcast presenter, "I used to think chaos was genius." The comment summed up a life lesson. Wisdom talks more softly than wit, but both have the same rhythm. Then I realized peace has better timing. Previously apprehensive directors now commended him for his presence. Sonic the Hedgehog, who has recently experienced a commercial comeback, showed the crew polite humor mixed with vintage theatricality. Returning as an elder statesman, the jester alternated energies without overpowering others that in private. Acquaintances observed that his temperament was rewired by spirituality. The neurochemistry of fame was altered by long evenings spent alone and painting. He fasted from social validation, studied Eckhart Tolle, and practiced meditation. Once a room eater, the man now favored quiet nooks. Collaborations were also subject to such discipline. He encouraged directors to conduct rehearsals without his presence on tiny independent projects since he felt that mutual trust fostered spontaneity the most. He claimed that the scene would take care of him if he made everyone else feel at ease. This was very different from his strategy in the 1990s, when discomfort was his preferred muse that in retrospect. Former co-stars recount two Jims sharing the same time frame. One is a monk observing clouds, and the other is a hurricane of instinct. They were classmates exchanging notes, not adversaries. A cinematographer who worked on both Dark Crimes and The Mask says, "He's still fearless, but the fearlessness now looks like patience." The change even affected the discussion culture on sets, with fewer practical jokes and more sincere check-ins between shots. Production assistants recall him discreetly cleaning up props while addressing the staff by name. The celebrity who had before sought dominance started honing his service skills. Carrey himself portrays these shifts more as weariness with illusion than as moral advancement. He once remarked, "You build a tower to prove you exist, and halfway up you realize the tower's made of anxiety." He found that laughter only functions as medication when it is accompanied by self-mockery. His participation in documentaries and introspective interviews, where he talked candidly about depression and purpose, topics that his co-workers earlier perceived lurking behind the manic energy, was led by this awareness. Vulnerability shocked audiences used to unending cheerfulness. However, such revelations let him connect with co-workers who had also experienced emotional trauma from constant production cycles. The clown who had so intensely frightened them suddenly changed into a kind elder. In order to teach budding comedians that joy without self-compassion fades out, he began coaching them. He told one group, "Don't just make faces. Be at peace with the people you already have." His idea of creative struggle changed as well. He now refers to this required rub that transforms ego into humility as frictional grace. He says, "You don't grow without splinters." The co-stars who used to wince at his unpredictable behavior frequently show their appreciation. Many people keep up friendships that last for decades. "No grudges," he explains, "just growing pains." His more recent partnerships, which are smaller and more personal, exhibit that maturity. Micro-budget plays shot with crews that value dialogue over mayhem. Carrey views creativity as a partnership with the universe rather than a victory over it, whether he is acting, painting, or philosophizing. This tenderness is sometimes mistaken for retreat by the public fascination. It's actually redirection. His Hollywood career, he says, has been an apprenticeship in empathy. While some veterans seek relevance via nostalgia, he seeks obscurity through submission. His humble quip, "They can't capture me. I've turned into light," despite the fact that photographers are still pursuing him, perfectly encapsulates his spirit as the comedian who explains transcendence without resorting to mockery. Reconciliation with the industry he once upset is included inside that paradox. Respect, even veneration, has taken the place of rumors of animosity. His emotional blueprint is cited by younger artists as evidence that artistic extremes can result in consciousness rather than devastation. His impromptu technique, which was originally thought to be chaotic, pioneered the genuineness that contemporary comedy films today value, according to directors. The suppleness Judd Apatow exhibited is borrowed by practitioners of no-script, creative techniques, ranging from contemporary improv troupes to him. Carrey smiles when asked if he misses the raucous decades of blockbusters and controversy. "It was beautiful madness," he recalls, "but madness wears you out." As a recurrent theme in his interviews, he integrates rather than condemns his past. For him, redemption is absorption rather than apology, admitting that the foundation for tranquility was created by volcanic drive. He observes, "You can't renounce a mountain you climbed. Just learn to sit quietly at the top." His later life partnerships are characterized by that tranquility. He calls engineers by name during voiceover sessions, makes jokes at his own expense, and closes each day by encouraging everyone to stay hydrated. A little, paternal rhythm that takes the place of spectacle. Weeks after wrap, crew workers exchange stories of generosity rather than pandemonium, including art print gifts, impromptu motivational speeches, and thank you emails. This is a more mature form of creative collision that attracts others to the warm field of authenticity rather than being destructive. Outside of movies, his painting activity serves as a colorful form of emotional autobiography. His Los Angeles studio is filled with enormous canvases of brilliant abstraction or bizarre political satire. It is described by visitors as a church of vibration, where words that were once punches or practical jokes are now brushstrokes. He says, "Painting is comedy without noise." Instead of using punchlines, the same desire toward cathartic release now uses pigment. Flashes of old Jim still appear despite the change. The fast elastic grin, the volcanic mock routine that erupts in the middle of a discussion. However, the anger now ends with inside laughing. It is the result of a performer who understands everything but fails to master anything. Smaller but crucial collisions still occur. Ego versus empathy, idea versus doubt. The calm man he has become is illuminated by every spark. When the loudest man in the room learns to whisper, what will happen? The sound in Jim Carrey's instance became orchestral. Once exploding as humor, the same inventiveness now emanates as philosophy. Carrey, who is over 60, lives his life more like a painter monk than a megastar. Part warning, half witness. The clamor of 1990s celebrity has subsided, to be replaced by contemplation of its price and its benefit. He recently stated, "I got what everyone chases, a self, and then I had to figure out what to do with all that attention." Giving it away appears to be the solution. Carrey spends a lot of time in his studio, which is filled with movie screen-sized canvases. The walls are covered in bright chaos, including blazing hearts, meditating figures, and apocalyptic clowns. They reflect the conflict between suffering and absurdity that formerly drove his comedy. The air is heavy with forgiveness and turpentine, and visitors remark the workshop hums with silent concentration. He treats quiet as if it were an instrument when he paints. He explains that every color starts as noise, then it finds harmony. His life may be summed up in that sentence. A journey from outrageous cacophony to emotional harmony, that he still chooses topics that tackle vulnerability or metamorphosis when working on film projects. His 2018 to 2020 television partnership with Michel Gondry, Kidding, epitomized the new Jim Carrey. He conveyed sensitivity with surreal humor while portraying a children's program host who was struggling with grief, the existential clown prince facing the harshness of life. Co-stars remember shows that were characterized by meditative quiet rather than traditional improvisation. He would discuss forgiveness, trauma, and consciousness in between takes. "He doesn't act anymore," Gondry noted. "He channels." The audience reacted to this genuineness, identifying the performer who had previously overdone his emotions as now daring to convey silence. His later years are likewise defined by the intersection of advocacy and art. He promotes children creative education initiatives, speaks bluntly compassionately about despair, and provides art to mental health and climate awareness organizations. He now maintains what he once built on rubber-faced humor with calm tenderness. Every canvas or statement, according to friends, feels like an apology to the younger self who mistook motion for meaning. But since laughter is still his global interpreter, he keeps humor close at hand. He claims, if you can laugh about despair, you've already changed its language. It's comedy turned therapy, a dialogue between self-destruction and self-understanding. The former famous figure alternates between a fun comeback and a period of seclusion in public life. Interviews turned into erratic paradoxical master seminars. He will extol enlightenment 1 minute, then punctuate it with a pratfall. Once perceived as instability, these contrasts now seem to be a manifestation of balance. Lao Tzu is being used by the same individual who brought crazy characters to chat shows to explain the timing of comedies. Strangely, the advice always seems familiar. It's the energetic kindness he's been after all along that I in the industry. He has also redefined friendship. Once estranged following creative disagreements, colleagues from previous decades observe how aging eliminated any conflict. Carrey goes above and beyond to make things right by sending handwritten letters of appreciation or paintings. One collaborator chuckled, "He can't hold grudges, maybe except for his old haircut." Those reunions bear witness to humility and growth. The lightning that once frightened people now leads them. He is cited by younger comedians as emotional permission, demonstrating that intensity can transition into contemplation without losing its spark. His daily routine is based on the interaction of art and spirituality. Before the sun rises, mornings are spent in prayer, meditation, and journaling in a looping script that combines mantras and jokes. Opening the enormous studio windows, he snickers and observes the sunlight streaming upon incomplete works. Afternoons are dedicated to charitable endeavors or sporadic voice acting. Gratitude lists are created at the end of the evening. One item says, "Today I learned patience from a traffic jam," and humility from the paint that chose its own direction. His comedy is still present, but it's more of a method to acknowledge the ridiculous sanctity of everyday life than a joke. People frequently wonder if retirement or disappearance will come next. Carrey responds that he's expanding beyond definitions rather than giving up. He asserts that artists don't retire. They simply switch media. He finds artistic expression in conversations, gardening, and lengthy phone conversations with his daughter Jane. Parenthood is the final improvisation. You make it up, scene by scene, he adds. This phrase encapsulates his transition from court jester to reflective father figure who is still improvising truth. People may still remember the extravaganza, including Bruce Almighty's daring sincerity and the masked stretchy escapes. Rewatching those performances today has a bittersweet effect since every cheesy smile concealed a man yearning for genuineness. That desire has matured into insight. He once remarked, "I thought fame would fill a hole. Instead, it showed me there was never a hole, only light I kept covering up." His public speeches are motivated by this new theology, which is equally humorous and compassionate, reminding budding artists that resistance kills genius quicker than failure. He exhorts them to remain open-minded. Such grounded delight appears to reassure the sometimes cynical entertainment industry. He comes to the set like a visiting yogi with perfect comic timing, and the producers characterize him as an oracle of unanticipated insight. His benevolence, such as writing thank you notes to interns, mediating disputes among crew, or making sure rap party speeches honor invisible labor, may be his most radical deed. According to old friends, he maintains that recognition is an art form in and of itself. That he jokes, "The only joke that always works is gratitude." He is no longer preoccupied with legacy, but it develops naturally. His flexibility is the source of freedom for a generation of comedians, from physical performers to existential storytellers. His daring experiments are credited with inspiring modern films full of improvisation. Carrey is cited by academics studying performance theory as evidence that comedy can go as deeply into consciousness as drama does into despair. Because he prefers brushstrokes than bibliographies, he doesn't read any of it. He explains, "I'm just painting how laughter feels." His last lesson may be this humility. Brilliance does not necessitate awareness of greatness. Carrey recently gave a quiet smile. When asked if he missed the mayhem that used to characterize him, he remarked, "I miss the innocence of it." He said, "But peace is louder." Contentment is a creative engine that is so silent that it is misunderstood for absence, he said. Stillness is just energy that has learned to trust itself. His career trajectory may be described as a noise that learned faith. The image of Carrey relaxed is oddly poignant for those who grew up with his cinematic cyclone. It debunks the fallacy that passion needs to burn in order to shine. He was honed into an instrument of awareness by the collisions that formerly defined him, between ego and empathy, between discipline and mayhem. If you listen carefully, you will see that every tantrum, every uncomfortable interview, every painting, and every prayer are all part of a larger improvisation on what it is to be human. Carrey now chuckles when detractors discuss the madness that drove his brilliance. Angry? He says, "The remark, I call it love with bad posture," is spot on. Humorous yet poignant, insightful yet ridiculous, in the end. That balance, the capacity to make others laugh without losing the lesson within the laugh, is the key he's been pursuing since his first pratfall. The comic has discovered his still point after 30 years of collisions, and even quiet feels intelligent, amusing, and alive from that moment on.